The rain in the city had a way of turning neon into liquid pain. It streaked the windows of Elias Thorne's fourth-floor walk-up, blurring the sign for the all-night noodle shop across the street into a smear of crimson and gold. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old paper, bourbon, and the faint, metallic tang of the typewriter he refused to retire. It was a smell that belonged to a different century, and Elias was its proud, anachronistic caretaker. At 68, his body was a roadmap of old injuries and late nights, but his eyes, the color of worn denim, still held the sharp, assessing glint of a man who knew how to find things people wanted to stay hidden. Right now, they were fixed on a trembling man in a $2,000 suit who was currently ruining the patina of Elias's favorite oak desk with his sweaty palms. He said he'd release the photos to the press. To my board, the man, Mr. Alastair Finch, whimpered. My wife, the shareholders, it would be a catastrophe. The source of his misery was a single, grainy photograph printed on cheap copy paper. It showed Finch in a compromising position with someone who was very clearly not his wife. It had arrived in a plain manila envelope with a demand for $50,000 in cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency, Elias had grunted, sliding the photo back. The devil's ledger. You should have come to me sooner. I didn't know who to trust. The email came from a scrambled address. He knew things, private things. Elias leaned back, the leather of his chair sighing in protest. The digital bogeyman. Everyone's scared of ghosts in the machine these days. They forget that ghosts leave traces in the real world, too. Paper trails, whispers, the smell of fear on a man's breath. He tapped the photo. This was printed. The envelope was hand-delivered, I assume? No postmark. Finch nodded miserably. Left at my receptionist's desk. She didn't see who dropped it off. A physical delivery for a digital threat. Interesting. Elias's mind, a finely tuned instrument for navigating the murky waters of human duplicity, was already working. This wasn't a faceless hack from a distant country. This was local, personal. The hacker enjoyed the tactile thrill, the proximity to his victims. He took the case. Not for the money, though Finch's retainer was substantial, but for the principle. The city was his, its secrets his to unearth, and this new breed of parasite, hiding behind firewalls and encryption, offended his old-world sensibilities. He spent the next 48 hours in his element. He visited the office building, charming the receptionist with his world-weary smile, learning that the envelope had been left during the morning rush by a courier in a generic uniform. He walked the streets, talking to newsstand vendors and homeless regulars, building a picture of the comings and goings. He tracked the courier company to a shell corporation, a dead end. The hacker was careful, but he'd made a mistake by engaging in the physical world. Elias could feel the thread, thin but tangible. His breakthrough came from the most analog of places, a public library. Cross-referencing Finch's social circle from old society pages in the newspaper archives with recent, minor scandals covered in the press, he found a pattern. 3 other men, all powerful, all discreetly shamed, had been targeted with similar initial contact, a physical note demanding a digital payment. The hacker was curating his victims, choosing those with the most to lose from public exposure. Elias returned to his office, the pieces clicking into place. He was typing up his notes on his 1967 Royal Quiet Deluxe, the steady clack, 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 a symphony of progress, when the door creaked open without a knock. A woman stood there. She was young, maybe late 20s, dressed in dark, functional tactical pants and a hoodie with a logo he didn't recognize. Her hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, and her face was all sharp, intelligent angles, devoid of makeup. In her hand, she held a tablet that seemed like an extension of her arm. Elias Thorne? Her voice was flat, devoid of the charming warmth he used to disarm people. The office is closed for walk-ins, he said, not looking up from his typewriter. Make an appointment with my answering machine. My name is Kaelen Vance. I'm your new shadow. She stepped inside, her eyes doing a quick, dismissive scan of the room. The filing cabinets, the stacks of case files, the complete absence of a computer monitor. As of 0900 today, I've been contracted by Mr. Alistair Finch's corporate security division to ensure your physical and digital safety during this investigation. Elias stopped typing. He slowly raised his head. My what? Your safety. The individual you are investigating, known online as Cerberus, is a Class A threat. He doesn't just expose secrets. He destroys firewalls, bricks devices, and has a history of turning his targets' digital lives against them in creatively destructive ways. Your methodology, or lack thereof, makes you a vulnerable vector. Elias let out a short, barking laugh. A vector? Young lady, I've been doing this since you were in diapers. I don't need a babysitter, especially not one who looks like she's about to storm a data center. Kaelen didn't smile. She tapped her tablet and held it up. On the screen was a complex web of lines and nodes. This is a simplified map of the digital footprint you've left in the last 48 hours. Your bank, using an ATM with a known skimmer. Your cloud-based answering service, which was breached 6 months ago. The library's public Wi-Fi, which is a cesspool of malware. You're a lighthouse, Mr. Thorne, broadcasting your every move. Cerberus already knows you're looking for him, and if he knows, he will come for you. A cold knot tightened in Elias's stomach. He hadn't considered that. His world was one of fingerprints and lies told with a twitching eye. The idea of an invisible, all-seeing enemy was alien. But the certainty in her voice, the cold data on her screen, was undeniable. Finch sent you, he asked, his voice low. His company did. They see you as a liability. I'm the patch. She finally lowered the tablet. My job is to build a firewall around your analog heart, Mr. Thorne, whether you like it or not. Elias looked from her face to his typewriter, then out the window at the rain-soaked city. His city. For the first time in decades, he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the draft from the window. The game had changed, and a new, unwelcome player had just taken the field. The next week was an exercise in mutual exasperation. Kaelen turned his office into a command center. A sleek, silent laptop appeared on a corner of his desk, its presence an insult to the royal. She installed a signal jammer that whined at a frequency only he and the neighborhood dogs could hear, and she'd swept the office for bugs, pronouncing it distressingly clean. Elias, for his part, ignored her. He continued his legwork, visiting smoky bars and exclusive clubs, leaning on old contacts. But now he was shadowed. Kaelen followed him like a silent, disapproving ghost, her fingers constantly flying across her phone or tablet. You realize, he said to her one evening as they sat in his car, staking out a gallery owner who was another of Cerberus's victims, that your glowing screen in a dark car is a bigger signal than a flare. It's a shielded device, and I'm monitoring police bands, your vitals, and the gallery security feed, she replied without looking up. A flare would be less efficient. My vitals, he sputtered. Heart rate monitor. In the cufflink I placed on your dresser this morning. Elias stared at her, aghast. He fumbled in his pocket, pulling out the simple silver cufflinks he'd worn for 20 years. They were gone. In their place were a pair of slightly heavier, cold metal ones. He ripped them off and tossed them into her lap. I am not one of your blinking servers to be monitored. A server would be easier to protect, she said calmly, picking them up. It doesn't have a stubborn, sentimental attachment to obsolete technology. Their investigation was a two-pronged attack on the same target, using entirely different arsenals. Elias, through a network of favors, discovered that the gallery owner had recently acquired a controversial collection of pre-digital surveillance equipment, a hobbyist obsession. Kaelen, meanwhile, had hacked the city's traffic camera system and isolated a single, recurring motorcycle that had been in the vicinity of each physical drop-off. The rider's face was never visible, but the bike's license plate was partially obscured by mud, a detail only a human would notice and a machine would filter out. It was during one of their rare, tense moments of collaboration, comparing the motorcycle's route with the gallery owner's client list, that the first attack came. Elias's landline rang, the old bell shrill in the quiet office. He picked it up. Thorne, a distorted, robotic voice echoed down the line. You should have stayed in your filing cabinets, old man. The digital world has teeth. The line went dead. At the same moment, Kaelen's laptop chimed an alarm. Her face, usually a mask of impassive concentration, tightened. "He's in," she whispered. "In where?" "Everywhere. Your bank account has just been zeroed out. Your cloud storage, all your case files, your notes, are being systematically deleted. And he's just sent an email blast from your address to everyone in your contact list." She looked up, her eyes meeting his for the first time with something other than professional disdain. "It's a manifesto, accusing you of being the blackmailer." Elias felt the world tilt. His life's work, his reputation, his meager savings, all being unmade by a ghost. He watched, numb, as Kaelen's fingers became a blur on her keyboard, launching countermeasures, building digital dams against the flood. "He's good," she muttered, a hint of professional respect in her voice. "He's using a polymorphic worm that's rewriting its own code as I block it." "Can you stop it?" Elias asked, his voice hoarse. "I can contain it, but the data he's already taken, it's gone." She finally looked away from the screen, her gaze falling on his typewriter, on the fresh sheet of paper in the roller. "Your notes? Are they only there?" Elias followed her gaze. On the paper was the summary of his findings, the list of names, the connection to the surveillance equipment. The only copy. A physical, immutable record. A slow, grim smile spread across his face. The chill of fear was replaced by the warm glow of vindication. "Yes," he said, "they're only there." For a moment, in the humming silence of the office, broken only by the rain and the frantic tapping of Kaelen's keys, a new understanding passed between them. His analog heart, as she called it, had just become their greatest asset. The attack forged an unsteady truce. Kaelen had managed to salvage Elias's reputation by tracing the email blast back to a series of offshore servers and providing digital proof of the hack to the authorities. But the message was clear. Cerberus was not just a blackmailer. He was a destroyer, and he was personally invested in Elias. Kaelen stopped talking about his vulnerabilities and started asking questions. Why the surveillance equipment? What's the connection? "It's not about the equipment itself," Elias said, pacing in front of his caseboard, which was now a chaotic mix of typed notes, grainy photos, and Kaelen's clean-printed network maps. "It's about the philosophy. This Cerberus, he's a purist in his own twisted way. He uses digital tools for the payoff, but his approach is tactile. He enjoys the hunt in the real world." The gallery owner, Alistair Finch, the others, they're all men who present a pristine, digital front to the world, but their sins are analog. Flesh and blood sins. He's punishing them for their hypocrisy. Kaelen considered this, her analytical mind processing the psychological profile. A moralistic hacker with a fetish for physical media. The motorcycle suggests he operates locally. He's watching them, and now he's watching us. Their breakthrough came from combining their strengths. Kaelen, using the partial license plate and the motorcycle's model identified from traffic cams, cross-referenced the data with municipal databases for parking permits and traffic violations. She narrowed it down to a list of 200 possible owners. Elias took the list. "Now, we do it the old-fashioned way." For 2 days, they drove. Elias, with his knowledge of the city's grid streets and hidden alleys, and Kaelen, with her GPS and real-time data updates, tracked down every motorcycle on the list. They were a study in contrasts. He, with his rumpled trench coat and intuitive leaps. She, with her tactical gear and relentless logic. They found it parked outside a nondescript brick warehouse in the city's industrial district. The license plate matched the mud-obscured pattern from the traffic cam. The warehouse was listed as a storage facility, but Kaelen's drone scan showed a sophisticated antenna array on the roof, far beyond the needs of a simple storage unit. "This is it," Elias breathed, a hunter's glint in his eye. "I'm detecting significant encrypted data traffic," Kaelen said, watching her monitor. "It's a fortress. He'll have tripwires, digital and physical." "Then we don't ring the doorbell," Elias said. He pointed to a rusted fire escape on the adjacent building. "We pay a visit from next door." An hour later, under the cover of a moonless night, they were on the roof of the neighboring building. A narrow, precarious gap separated them from the hacker's warehouse. Kaelen assembled a lightweight, carbon fiber bridge from her pack. "You carry a bridge in your bag?" Elias asked, incredulous. "Standard issue for urban infiltration," she replied, not missing a beat. They crossed into the darkness. Inside, the warehouse was a cathedral of chaos. One side was a pristine server farm, rows of black towers humming with cool, blue light. The other was a museum of analog technology. Reel-to-reel tape recorders, stacks of VHS tapes, walls covered in grainy surveillance photos of their victims, and in the center, a vast table covered in schematic diagrams and typewriters. Dozens of them, all older than Elias's Royal. And there, working at a terminal that merged a modern computer with the keyboard of an ancient teletype machine, was a young man. He was pale, thin, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, his face illuminated by the screens. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a bored, over-caffeinated grad student. He turned as they entered, not surprised. A small, sad smile played on his lips. "Mr. Thorne, and the formidable Ms. Vance. I've been expecting you." His voice was quiet, undistorted. "I must admit, your symbiosis was an unforeseen variable. The dinosaur and the drone. A fascinating pairing." "It's over, Cerberus," Elias said, his voice steady. "My name is Leo," the young man said. "Leo Finch." The name hung in the air. Elias felt the ground shift beneath him for the second time. Finch, Alistair's estranged, forgotten son from a first marriage. The black sheep, the computer prodigy who dropped out of MIT. "He told everyone I was dead, didn't he?" Leo said, his smile turning bitter. "A scandal to be erased. Too eccentric, too digital. He traded my mother for a newer model, a society wife who could give him the pristine, analog life he wanted. He buried us in money and silence." He gestured to the walls of photos, the tapes. "I'm not a blackmailer, Mr. Thorne. I'm an archivist. I'm collecting the evidence of their true, filthy, analog lives. The lives they pretend don't exist while they sit in judgment from their digital thrones. I'm not extorting them for money. I'm forcing them to acknowledge the truth. The money is just a transaction, a way to fund my work." Kaelen had her tablet out, her fingers hovering. "He's got a dead man's switch," she said quietly to Elias. "If I disrupt his primary system, it will trigger a data dump. Every secret, every photo, everything goes public. A scorched earth policy," Elias said, looking at Leo. He saw not a criminal mastermind, but a deeply wounded boy using his immense talent to punish a father who had rejected him. The case had transformed from a hunt for a monster into a tragic family drama. "It doesn't have to be this way, Leo," Elias said, taking a step forward, his voice softening into the one he used for scared witnesses and broken clients. "This won't make him see you. It will only confirm his belief that you're a problem to be solved." "It's too late for that," Leo said, his hand moving towards a large, red button on his console. "The truth is the only thing that matters." In that frozen second, Elias knew that words, his primary weapon, had failed. Kaelen knew her technology was useless. The solution had to be something else. Something neither digital nor entirely analog. Elias's eyes fell on the table of typewriters. And he had an idea. "You appreciate the old ways, don't you, Leo?" Elias said, his voice calm, conversational. He walked slowly towards the table, ignoring the red button. The permanence of it. The click of the key, the strike of the metal on the page. No backspace. No delete. A commitment. Leo watched him, wary but intrigued. Elias stopped at the table and picked up a sheet of paper that was in one of the typewriters. It was a rambling, philosophical manifesto, the same one that had been sent from Elias's email. "You typed this," Elias said. "Not on that." He nodded towards the computer. "But on one of these. Because it mattered to you." He looked Leo directly in the eye. "So let's make a deal. The old way. A gentleman's agreement. No digital dead man's switches. No more hacks." "What kind of deal?" Leo asked, his voice barely a whisper. "You give me all the evidence. The originals. The drives. Everything. I become the custodian of these truths. And I give you my word, typed on this paper and signed, that I will personally ensure your father and all the others, sit down with you. They will hear you. They will acknowledge what they did. The warehouse was silent except for the hum of the servers. Kaelen held her breath, her hands still poised over her tablet. This was a gamble of epic proportions, based entirely on Elias's read of a fractured human being. Leo stared at Elias, his eyes searching the older man's face for deceit. He saw none. He saw the weariness, the integrity, the analog heart. Slowly, hesitantly, he nodded. Elias pulled up a chair, fed a fresh sheet of paper into the nearest typewriter, and began to type. The sound, loud and definitive, filled the space. Clack, clack, clack. It was the sound of a truce. The sound of a soul being saved, not by a firewall, but by a promise made tangible on a piece of paper. The aftermath was complex and messy. Alistair Finch, faced with the evidence of his son's pain and the alternative of total ruin, agreed to the meeting. It was tense, painful, and far from a storybook reconciliation, but it was a start. The other victims, their secrets held in trust by Elias, were compelled to listen, to make amends in ways the law could never enforce. Leo entered a plea bargain, his sentence heavily mitigated by his cooperation and the unique circumstances Elias outlined for the judge. His talents were redirected into a controlled, constructive outlet. Elias's office returned to its previous state, mostly. The signal jammer was gone, but a high-grade, Kaelen-approved encrypted router now sat discreetly in a corner, for her use when she visited. She came by once a week under the pretext of checking his digital hygiene. They would drink coffee, his strong and black, hers a complicated concoction from a thermos, and talk about cases. One afternoon, she placed a small, carefully wrapped box on his desk. "What's this?" he asked. "An upgrade." He unwrapped it. It was a pair of silver cufflinks. They looked exactly like his old ones. "They're clean," she said. "No trackers. But the metal is a special alloy. It can disrupt long-range listening devices and block RFID skimmers. Just a little insurance." Elias picked them up. They felt right in his hand. The same weight, the same cool touch. "Thank you, Kaelen," he said, and he meant it. He looked out the window. The city was the same. The rain still fell. The neon still bled. But he saw it differently now. He understood the invisible currents that flowed beneath its streets, the digital ghosts that haunted its skyscrapers. And he knew he didn't have to face them alone. He had a partner, a bridge between his world and the new one. He slipped the new cufflinks into his sleeves. They were a perfect fit,